It's very easy to get caught up in the midst of the price cuts and the federal tax credit, which you qualify for the full $7,500 if you take delivery before March 1st. The Model 3 has never been cheaper, and you can typically find the long range in existing inventory. But it's easy to forget that just a couple months ago, we were talking about there being a big refresh from a Reuters report claiming that Tesla is actively working on ways to improve the desirability of the Model 3. But what I think is also more likely than that alleged source is Tesla catching up on Model 3 demand so that the assembly line doesn't have to run like crazy. And there's even old interviews Elon Musk had with Sandy Munro where he details, the reason they haven't switched the Model 3 to single-piece castings like they have on the Model Y is because the Model 3 at that time was kind of their bloodline. Like, the Model 3 was bringing in all of the money for the company because the Model Y had just started and was just ramping up. So he said their focus was to get Giga Berlin, Giga Texas, and Giga Shanghai more fully ramped so that you could shut down the Model 3 assembly line, improve it with single-piece castings, and hopefully even a structural battery pack, and then you won't bankrupt the company by taking that downtime. Now that these other factories are coming online and slowly inching towards being more profitable to run, that's why a lot of people are excited for Project Highland, which Reuters is saying we wouldn't see the refreshed Model 3 until the third quarter of 2023, and there's even a good chance that it would first happen in China before we saw it here in the United States. And there's more and more sightings going on of clearly some type of design update. Not obviously a super major one based on these pictures that people have been seeing of it, but a lot of people are speculating that there could be cameras in the headlights and that could be part of hardware 4. There's also been some rumors that Tesla is actually going to simplify the front-facing camera layout with hardware 4 because there will be a new camera sensor with a higher megapixel count and a wider field of view that basically replaces the job of some of those extra cameras right behind your rear view mirror that are always facing forward. That's basically powering everything, and hopefully I think that would result in hardware 4 performing better in full self-driving beta. But according to Tesla, hardware 4 is not necessary to achieve full self-driving, but I don't know how they can tell what is actually necessary to achieve that. But overall, I'm still struggling to figure out exactly what Tesla is going to do if the Reuters report ends up being accurate. Like, how are they going to increase desirability? In previous videos I talked about them switching to capacitive buttons or the yoke, which I don't even think most people would want. And according to Fran's most recent interview on the Ride the Lightning podcast, he also says that gear stocks are probably here to stay. His words were basically they have a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality towards the gear stocks on the Model 3 and Y, which is funny that Franz brings that up because it's like, was that broken on the Model S and X, but you tried to fix that anyway? But based on his wording, it sounds like the Model 3 and Y, at least with the steering wheel and gear stocks, are probably going to stick around. So maybe they've got something else in the works. It could be ventilated seats, it could be a rear-mounted display for the backseat passengers, or maybe a bigger screen with thinner bezels or a higher refresh rate and that kind of thing. But again, this is one of the great perks, but also one of the greatest downsides of trying to time your Tesla purchase. There's always something going on. There's always like a deal or some tax credit that is temporarily qualifying for, and the price cuts seem really exciting. And after March 1st, the tax credit is gonna go down probably, especially for the lithium iron phosphate Model 3. But because we don't have word yet on what the percentage of battery materials are mined from in the Model 3 and Y, it may only qualify for half of the credit or none of the credit by next year. So the prices may go up once they refresh the Model 3 if they did end up doing those things like ventilated seats or a better display. Or another thing I could see them bringing down to the other Teslas is that beefed up graphics card that they put in the Model S and X. So maybe the 2024 Model 3 is going to be able to play all your Steam games, but the older Model 3s can't. Oh no, I gotta buy a whole new car for that, right? But Tesla is constantly improving, constantly iterating, and sure, I'm willing to admit there are certain refreshes that are much bigger than others, but at a certain point, I think you just have to ask yourself, like, am I comfortable buying a vehicle and owning it knowing that there may be better versions of it in the future? And while sure, there may be some improvements that they make with the new Model 3, there also may be some drawbacks. There may be some things that they take out, and depending on how accurate the Reuters report is, they may end up looking at more ways of cutting cost and reducing complexity of manufacturing, which could actually make the product worse. One of those things I just barely ducked under. I took delivery of my Model 3 in August, but in October they dropped the ultrasonic sensors, which means no auto park, no park assist, no summon, no smart summon, until Tesla rolls out the occupancy network to all these new vehicles, and they still haven't done it yet. It's literally been like 3 months now, and they still have not figured out how to add that to Teslas that don't have the ultrasonic sensors. So who knows what they might take out next? Could it be, you know, the wireless chargers? Maybe they decide that's too expensive to include. We need to make that an aftermarket thing, or they remove the heated steering wheel just because they're like, well, our focus isn't so much on making the Model 3 more of a luxury car. We want to make it more of a cheap, you know, Honda Civic competitor, because clearly with this most recent round of price cuts, they're definitely leaning on more of the affordability side. So if they continue to go in that direction and say, you know, once the tax credit's not around, we want to start pushing prices down even more so that we get lots of people buying it with single piece castings and a structural battery pack, maybe we can get the price closer to $35,000 or less. Also, because that's such a big chassis update, I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps in order to make the battery pack structural, or in order to save cost on manufacturing the Model 3, maybe they make the range lower. Maybe they settle with 250 miles of range instead of 270 miles of range, but hey, range is overrated, right? That's kind of the interesting thing that I've experienced, having gone from the, you know, planning stage of when do I want to buy my car, which took like 3 years for us to actually pull the trigger and do it, and then now owning the vehicle for several months and seeing how rumors and news updates and prices change and features change. It's like, sure, yeah, it would have been cool if I knew the future and was perfectly aware that the tax credit would be updated so that for the first 2 months of 2023, where the battery materials came from wouldn't end up being relevant, and then I could have basically got the car for the price we paid plus the federal tax credit. Yeah, if you know the future, it's really easy to know when to buy and what to buy, but we don't know the future. And at the same time, it's like, well, because we pulled the trigger last year, now we get standard connectivity for the life of the vehicle. Whereas if you haven't ordered your new Tesla yet, after 8 years, we still don't know what Tesla's gonna do, but they changed the terms and conditions in the order agreement to standard connectivity only qualifying for 8 years, which means either Bluetooth or navigation and GPS is not gonna work with your car anymore, or after 8 years of ownership, they may start requiring you to pay for premium connectivity, or maybe standard connectivity is gonna cost $5 a month or something like that. And who knows what premium connectivity is going to cost by 2030. There's a bunch of unknowns. Same with the ultrasonic sensors. It's like, they hope to replicate park assist in the future without using ultrasonic sensors, but we don't know when that's going to happen. And even if it does, we don't know if it'll be as good as having the dedicated ultrasonic sensor hardware. There's been so many new Tesla owners complaining about how tricky it is to know how much space they have between, you know, the parking barrier and their vehicle. Maybe Tesla in the future is going to start charging extra to activate park assist. You know, Tesla is constantly looking at ways to cut cost and improve the product, and that is both a pro and a con, right? So Project Highland might have some features that are way better than before, but they also may cut out some things that make the product worse than before. Maybe it's restricting more features to the long range and performance Model 3s and cutting out more things from the rear-wheel drive Model 3. So I will, of course, speculate with you guys here and cover all the news as we hear about it, but that's just the overall message that I wanted to remind you, is like, there's always something coming around the corner, and the next year model is probably going to have something over last year's, whether it be pricing or features, but there may also be things they're constantly taking away, and we don't realize yet how nice we actually have it. Maybe Tesla's dropping door handles on the next model, and that's just going to get even more confusing when people come up to the door, and no, they're not self-presenting, they just kind of unlatch themselves, and you're going to have to reach around the corner to actually open the door or something like that. So ultimately, when is the right time to make the purchase? It's when you feel comfortable with the features that are being offered and the pricing that it's currently set at, and you're hopefully in a responsible financial position to say, yes, I can afford this vehicle and it has the features that I care about. And then you buy it, you drive it, you enjoy it, and you don't look back, because there will always be some kind of hindsight. There will always be time that goes on that goes, oh, if I would have waited, I could have got this big a discount. I know that feeling. I know it sucks, but we don't know the future, you know? And it's very easy to just look at the stock market and say, oh man, if I would have put every dollar I had back in Tesla stock way back when, I would be a millionaire now. Yeah, it's always easy in hindsight, but you didn't know that, and rightfully so, because the future is unknown and the past can't be changed, but the now is a gift, and that's why we call it the present. Very wise words spoken from a turtle from Kung Fu Panda. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on when the best time to buy a Model 3 is down in the comments below, and thank you to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos, and thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.